promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 p.m. in Lagos. Good evening and welcome to Newslink, coming to you live on West Africa, Democracy Radio 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here are the top stories. Coalition of Nigerian civil society organization calls for electronic transmission of election results amid legislative debate.
Why don't we have voting proceedings that stipulate clearly what are you voting upon? Who is voting yes or no? And these data are not in the public domain.
Female circumcision trial continues in the Gambia. Mali launches 2026 humanitarian response plan to support millions facing insecurity.
Despite a challenging environment, collective efforts by partners have enabled life-saving assistance for 1.8 million people in Mali.
Wanep Togo warns of rising insecurity in 2025 report. Please stay with us for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Augustine Bill Coley.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast this evening. We begin in Nigeria as fresh calls for real-time electronic transmission of election results are gaining momentum ahead of the 2027 general elections. Civil society organizations and governance advocates warn that ongoing debates around the Electoral Act could shape public trust in Nigeria's democratic process. The push for stronger electoral transparency has intensified following renewed controversy over provisions in the proposed Electoral Act amendments, particularly around electronic transmission of results from polling units. Our correspondent Yechenu Sasetu reports.
A coalition of over 70 civil society organizations has insisted that real-time electronic transmission should be mandatory, arguing that it is critical to improving credibility, reducing manipulation during collation, and rebuilding voter confidence. The debate comes amid growing confusion over the Senate's position. While some lawmakers say electronic transmission remains part of the law, critics argue that failure to make it compulsory weakens accountability and leaves room for discretion that could undermine transparency. Former Minister of Education, Obi Ezekwesili, warns lawmakers against decisions that could erode public trust.
We do know that the reason citizens love democracy is that of all the political systems, this is the only political system in which they legitimize public leadership. So the office of the president is the highest office in the land, but it is the office of the citizen that gives legitimacy to it. And nobody becomes president if a citizen does not vote for them collectively.
Similarly, civic leaders continue to emphasize that technology-driven safeguards are not merely technical adjustments, but essential democratic tools capable of strengthening participation and protecting votes. Chevening scholar Hamzat Lowell calls for transparency and accountability.
As we advocate for openness, why don't we have voting proceedings that stipulate clearly what are you voting upon? Who is voting yes or no? And these data are not in the public domain. Because when you do this, what you do is you're providing clarity, you're ensuring transparency and accountability, and your constituents can know where you stand. And then people can know the person representing me either at the House of Rep or the Senate, are they actually carrying the will of us who are the constituents?
Supporters of mandatory electronic transmission argue that Nigeria's electoral process remains vulnerable at the collation stage, where manual handling of results has historically triggered disputes and allegations of tampering. They say clear legal backing for real-time transmission would reduce ambiguity and enhance transparency across the electoral chain. For the Bili ADR, Yechenu Sasetu in Abuja.
Elsewhere in the Gambia, the trial of 3 women accused of performing a female circumcision that allegedly led to the death of a 1-year-old girl continued this Friday. The court proceedings focused on medical evidence, with defense lawyers challenging the admissibility of a hospital report linking the child's death to procedure. The case took a dramatic turn when one of the accused suddenly fainted in the dock, prompting a brief halt in the proceedings. WADR's Sandona Mendy completes the story.
The accused Fatu Kamara, Hawa Conte, and Omisawane
were being prosecuted for allegedly circumcising the child, causing fatal complications. The prosecution summoned Dr. Stephanie Awamendi, a gynecologist and deputy head of surgery at Bundu Maternity Hospital, who testified that the child was brought to the hospital already dead for hemorrhagic shock linked to circumcision. Family members also reported the child had been circumcised 2 days earlier and had been bleeding before being taken to the hospital. When the state sought to tender a hospital medical report during the proceedings, the defense objected, arguing that Dr. Mendy was not the author of the document and lacked direct knowledge of the examination. However, the prosecution insisted that the report was relevant. Proceedings were briefly halted after the first accused, Fatou Kamara, lost consciousness in the dock. Justice Jane adjourned the case to February 10, 2026 to rule on the admissibility of the medical report. The court is set to rule on the disputed evidence at the next sittings. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
Now to security issues in Mali, where the humanitarian crisis continues to affect millions of people, particularly in areas impacted by insecurity. To address the situation, the Malian government and the United Nations system have launched the 2026 Humanitarian Response Plan. According to authorities, the strategy aims at improving assistance for people facing humanitarian emergencies. Christopher Aticho reports.
According to Malian authorities, the 2026 response plan will support 3.8 million people nationwide. It will focus mainly on vulnerable populations, improve access to basic social services, and scale up emergency aid in areas hardest hit by insecurity and climate-related challenges. This will require the mobilization of significant funding. The budget is estimated at nearly $578 million, or 322 billion CFA funds. Reviewing efforts made in 2025, the United Nations Resilience Coordinator, Hannah Singer Hamdi, welcomed the result achieved despite limited financial resources.
Malgré un contexte difficile,
Despite a challenging environment, shrinking humanitarian access and limited funding, collective efforts by partners have enabled life-saving assistance for 1.8 million people in Mali. However, major challenges persist, with more than 415,000 people being displaced.
15,000 personnes sont déplacées.
To reach these objectives, the government is counting on stronger coordination among humanitarian actors. Asaba Diallo Touré is Minister of Health and Social Development.
Le gouvernement du Mali
The government of Mali remains firmly committed to supporting the most vulnerable. Greater emphasis will be placed on sustainable solutions requiring closer collaboration among community actors, humanitarian agencies, and development partners, as well as stronger operational coordination.
Coordination opérationnelle.
With this plan, Mali and its partners hope to strengthen the effectiveness of humanitarian response and meet the urgent need of millions of people from Bamako.
Christopher Aticho with that report. Meanwhile, Malian journalist Yusuf Sissoko is currently in custody after an article he published about Niger in early February. The editor of the weekly newspaper, The Alternating Period, appeared before the prosecutor at the National Cybercrime Unit in Bamako on Thursday. His trial is scheduled for March 9, 2026 before the National Cybercrime Unit. The article in question concerns the reaction of Nigerian President Abdurrahman Tiani following the attack on Niamey Airport on the 28th and 29th of January, claimed by the Islamic State group. Charges against journalist Yusuf Sissoko include disseminating false information, damaging the reputation of the state, and insulting a foreign head of state. The offense of insulting a foreign head of state is provided for in the Malian Penal Code and has already been applied in recent cases.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now, still on security issues, the West African Network for Peace Building, WANEP Togo, has presented its 2025 security report. The study, conducted under the Early Warning and Conflict Prevention Program, highlights a worrying rise in security incidents across the country. The report was unveiled on Wednesday in Lomé during a press conference. Imo Edit gives the details.
The 2025 security report by WANEP Togo analyzes three main areas: democracy and governance, gender-based violence, and environmental and health risk. In total, 629 incidents were recorded nationwide. These resulted in 157 deaths and more than 390 injuries, an overall increase of 40% compared to 2024. In detail, the democracy and governance category accounts for the majority of incidents, with 424 cases recorded. This is followed by gender-based violence with 108 cases, while environmental and health risk registered 52 incidents. Seyram Adiakpo is a coordinator of WANEP Togo.
Often carried out for cultural, social, and traditional reasons, these practices have long-lasting consequences for health. When performed by someone who is not properly trained or equipped, severe bleeding can occur and may lead to the girl's death. There are also infections, difficulties during sexual relations, complications in pregnancy, and especially during childbirth, where bleeding can become fatal.
The document also enabled the production of a map of high-risk zones, intended to alert the public and authorities about preventive measures to adopt.
Overall, there's been a noticeable decline. However, in some communities in the north of the country, the practice persists, even if carried out more discreetly. While the government has enacted laws, resistance to change remains within certain communities.
Through this report, WANEP Togo is calling on authorities, civil society actors, and local communities to strengthen conflict prevention mechanisms in order to preserve peace and social cohesion in Togo.
Lomé correspondent Sylvie Ouedraogo sent that report voiced by Imo Edit. To some humanitarian issues, Liberian President Joseph Boakai has dashed the hopes of residents at the 72nd Barracks, ordering the armed forces of the country to proceed with their eviction exercise. The decision comes despite numerous appeals from the long-term occupants who have been pleading for more time to find alternative housing. The 72nd Barracks, located on the outskirts of Monrovia, has been home to hundreds of families, many of whom are veterans or descendants of former military personnel. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
The over 12 acres, according to the AFL, is crucial for development of modern military facilities. Since the eviction notice from the armed forces of Liberia, many families have been homeless and have since called for an extension. One of such is the owner of a large entertainment center who said she invested over $500,000.
I see for some a compensation. If they can even give me one a woman, they can help me with any amount. I just paying them.
But responding to the matter Thursday, Liberian President Joseph Boakai said the land belongs to the armed forces of Liberia and they should reclaim it.
You know, this is one of the things that we have to do in this country. That's why I said to minister to agencies, when you have an agency, make sure, far from running an office, know your assets. So the army people know the demarcation, they know what land belongs to them. If they don't, there's a way to determine that, but we'll make sure that the army is not violating anybody's right. The army is entitled to decent livelihood that they are placed. God is not making new land. That place was for the army, and the army is going there to take it back.
The president's statement has been met with anger by the affected residents. The evasion started this week in some part, leaving little time for a peaceful resolution. For Newslink, WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Now to bilateral relations. Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has reaffirmed his country's commitment to deepening trade, investment, and financial cooperation with Zambia, praising the country's recent economic reforms and democratic credentials. The Ghanaian leader is in Zambia for a 3-day state visit at the invitation of his Zambian counterpart, President Hakainde Hichilema. Speaking before lawmakers in Lusaka, President Mahama cited the stabilization of the Zambian kwacha and ongoing reforms as positive signals to investors, while expressing confidence in the country's preparations for elections in 2026.
The improved performance of the Zambian currency, the kwacha, and the ongoing reform agenda sends positive signals to investors and regional partners. And so Ghana looks forward to deepening trade, investment, and financial cooperation with Zambia to reinforce resilience and shared prosperity. Ghana follows Zambia's democratic journey with keen interest and confidence. And as Zambia prepares for general elections in August this year, we wish to express our trust in the strength of your democratic institutions and the commitment of the Zambian people for free and fair elections. It is in this spirit that Ghana and Zambia have revitalized our Permanent Joint Commission for Cooperation, providing a structured, results-oriented framework for collaboration across all priority sectors, including trade, investment, energy, tourism, mining, agriculture, education, science and technology, youth development, and defense cooperation. Just this afternoon, we have signed 10 memorandums of understanding to act as the framework for our joint cooperation.
Ghana's President John Mahama speaking. Meanwhile, Ghana's National Labour Commission has directed senior staff unions in public universities to immediately suspend their indefinite strike over conditions of service and pay-related concerns. The Commission warns that negotiations cannot continue while the action persists. WADR's Nadia Editor reports.
The National Labour Commission issued the directive after summoning the unions and the employers to a hearing on February 4, 2025. Those listed in the strike include the Senior Staff Association, Universities of Ghana, the Teachers and Educational Workers Union of the TUC, the Federation of Universities Senior Staff Association of Ghana, and the Technical Universities Administrators Association of Ghana. At the sitting, only the Technical Universities Administrators Association of Ghana, TUAG, appeared while the other unions were absent. Representatives of the employers, including the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission and the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, were present. Management told the Commission that the Senior Staff Association of the Universities of Ghana began an indefinite strike on February 3, with the other unions also participating, though TUAC said it was not part of the action. After deliberations, the Commission ordered all striking staff to return to work immediately, insisting that the substantive issues under the dispute will only be addressed once the strike is suspended. It also asked the Technical Universities Administrators Association of Ghana, TUAG, to formally state in writing its position if it is not participating in industrial action. The unions have been urged to comply with the directive to allow dialogue to resume and restore normal operations across university campuses. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
You are listening to Newslink live on West Africa, Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar, and online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Coalition of Nigerian Civil Society Organization calls for electronic transmission of election results amid legislative debate. Female circumcision trial continues in the Gambia. Mali launches 2026 humanitarian response plan to support millions facing insecurity. And Wadr Togo warns of rising security incidents in 2025 report. Still ahead in the news, we have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for being with us. We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Focusing on accountability, let's turn to Burkina Faso, where 7 public servants have been dismissed or referred to disciplinary councils over alleged acts of corruption. They include a land officer, a doctor, and both national and municipal police officers. Abdullahi Hassan completes the story.
4 days after the Korak video surfaced, the government announced sanctions. According to the Minister of Public Servants, Matthias Traore, authorities tasked with implementing public policy said the officials involved had either been dismissed from the civil service or referred to disciplinary councils.
Au titre du ministère de la Sécurité,
under the Ministry of Security, Mr. Sawadogo Robert, registration number 240873, a police warrant officer has been dismissed for conduct deemed damaging to the ethics and honor of the service. Mr. Sankane Seni, registration number 240559, also a police warrant officer, has been referred referred to a disciplinary council under the Ministry of Health. Mr. Bowa Jacks, registration number 278480M, a specialist doctor in stomatology and maxillofacial surgery, has been referred to a disciplinary council.
All 7 individuals featured in the video are affected by these measures. However, the specialist doctor in stomatology has denied the allegations. In a letter sent to his superior and later published on Facebook, he says, supported by purchase receipt, that he was assisting the patient by procuring medical equipment.
Our Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kabat's report, voiced by Abdullahi Hassan.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview segment focuses on Nigeria, where conversations about electoral reform are back in focus following renewed debate in the Senate over electronic transmission of election results. It is a key demand by many civil society groups seeking greater transparency in elections. Our guest is Clifford Edidi, a civil society actor who shares insights about the matter.
It's a pity that the cry of Nigerians, not just civil society, that is at stake. We are all stakeholders to the issue on ground. But very sadly, yesterday, the Senate opted for what will rather benefit them, what will rather profit them, what will rather keep them in power, rather than yearning to the yearnings of the ordinary citizens. The act in question, if you remember vividly, the election that brought in the incumbent president, which is Tinubu, was flawed with a lot of malpractices, and it was challenged in court. The Supreme Court and Mr. Obi, one of the running presidential candidates, took the matter before the court and also took the INEC, the body responsible for election. And this was the issue. Let me just put in category A and B. One of the electoral house says it's optional. One of the says optional to either transmit votes from the polling unit live and give access to anybody to challenge or contest any result. That is the first option. The second option makes it compulsory that at every voting unit, election will be transmitted. Parties, anybody can have access to it. And what we were clamoring for, all Nigeria, not just civil society, was that we opt for the compulsory transmission of the election.
Why is electronic transmission of election results so important to civil society groups in Nigeria's electoral reform process?
As stakeholders, either as a civil society organization or even as Nigerians, it is very, very important because it's transparent, it's call for accountability and transparency. We want to be sure that every vote counts, every Nigerian vote counts. And that's why we opted for compulsory transmission of electoral results. And parties in contest should have access to results and materials to download it and see it. And if you must have a transparent and democratic system of government, we're opting that BVAS should be compulsory transmitted from electoral booths.
Now, what risks does the ongoing confusion over the Electoral Act amendments pose to public trust in the country's electoral system?
Yes, the only thing we have vital, the only thing that makes us stakeholder in governance are just be taken away from us. So there's no trust. The only thing that binds us with government, the only thing that gives us the confidence are just be taken away from us. So as it is now, we don't have a say. It doesn't matter whether we vote, we don't vote. I call it option A. What they opted for is that it's subject to malpractices and cannot be contested. So whatever the INEC says, whoever they say is the winner, whatever they declare, is fine. So it's the same material. It makes us, the voters, civil society organizations, powerless. So at this point, we don't have any trust and we don't believe in the forthcoming election that is going to represent our true interest because they've already taken their way.
As the harmonization process between the Senate and the House of Representatives continues, what would civil society actors like to see done differently to ensure transparency and accountability?
What we want is that BVAS should be transmitted. Let my vote count. The only way my vote should count, if I vote, let the transmission be done instantly. Let every party have access to the results. That's all. That's what we just need, transparency.
Clifford Edidi is a civil society actor in Nigeria. Now in the world of sports, South African Premium Division side Chippa United Football Club have officially confirmed the departure of Nigerian goalkeeper Stanley Nwambali following his formal request to leave the club. In a statement, the Port Elizabeth-based club disclosed that Nwambali submitted a request to depart after careful discussions regarding his future. The club noted that after due consideration, management agreed to grant the experienced shotstopper his release. Nwambali, who joined the Chile Boys several seasons ago, established himself as a key figure within the squad through his consistency, professionalism and commitment on and off the pitch. During his time at Chippa United, the Nigerian international earned plaudits for a series of commanding performances, playing a vital role in the club's campaign in the South African top flight. Chippa United in their official communication expressed a deep appreciation for Nwambali's years of service, describing his contribution as significant and enduring. That's the latest in the world of sports. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal, on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Thank you for listening. Many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maud Ju for the technical support. Do interact with us via our social media platforms X, Instagram and Facebook at WADR English. I am Augustine Curley. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your